All right. Hello, Schachter.
Hello, Casper.
Welcome to our audience to another episode of Consent Countdown, where we talk about how consent plays a role in our life. It would do us well to come up with a tagline.
Yeah, we can work on that. Or
We can work on that.
if you've got one that you think would work. We are counting down consent in our lives.
Without numbers.
No numbers.
No numbers. No ratings. Just fake sports.
Fake sports. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a week.
Yeah. So anyone can feel free to participate through comments, questions, all that good stuff. Anything else?
Not from me.
Not for you. All right.
Yeah.
I'll get started. I'll get started with my story.
Yep.
My story of what happened to me in the world of consent this week.
Yep.
So I have a friend named Billy, and I know Billy from the comedy world, and we also have some mutual friends. And the last time Billy and I hung out, we hung out at my place, and we were smoking some weed. And I've known Billy for a while, and he cannot always handle his weed. But like safe, like I know him, we're all comfortable, whatever. At some moment I'm like, oh my God, Billy, I really want buffalo chicken pizza. And he's like, ooh, get buffalo chicken pizza. And I'm like, do you want? And he's like, nah, but you should get it. And I was like, nah, I'm not gonna get it. And he was like, no, you should get it. Get it. If you want it, you should totally get it. And I'm like, no, like, it's fine. Like, I'm good. And he was like, if you want it, like, why don't you just get it? Like, just order it. It'll be, like, so good. And I'm just like, no, it's fine. And I, like, changed the conversation topic. Maybe I went to go to the kitchen to get a snack or something. And we finished hanging out, and that's that. And I know from my perspective, in that moment, I'm thinking like, dude, can you like stop? Like, I told you I have a craving. I don't have to act on every craving I have. And like, I'm not ordering an entire pizza. I'm not going to walk to the place because walking. And and like I'm good. Like, it would taste good, but like I'm fine. And like, honestly, the fact that you're not just like letting it go and like in a way kind of like not hearing my no is really frustrating. Like, it's like you think you know what's best for me rather than like listening to me and like where I'm at. And so the hangout was over, and like maybe we texted a couple times since, but like I know I was feeling distant. And then I happened to have seen him at a party this weekend. And I had also seen him since, and it was just very much like either a wave or a quick hug, and then I went to go talk to other people. And I saw him at this party, and I was like in a pretty good mood. He went with his girlfriend, which like just made me feel safer. Like, being around him is like, she was with him basically the whole time. And like, oh, like, there's another woman here. Like, hopefully if something, like if he's annoying, like she can back me up. And I was like, oh, by the way, I met someone you might know in the comedy world, like we've become friends, and I dropped his name, and he's like, oh yeah, I love him. I was like, but wait, there's also someone who I met recently who I despise in the comedy world. Like, he is an asshole. And Billy's like, who? And I was like, his name is David, insert last name here. And he's like, oh yeah, I know him. I was like, he's a total asshole. And he's like, that's so funny that you say that, because like that's sometimes people call me an asshole. And like that's really funny. And I'm like, mm-hmm. And then he's like, and I was like, he's like, I want to hear what this is all about. If you're cool with sharing. I was like, yeah. I'll share with you another time. Like, he was on his way out, so fine. Meanwhile, I know that this person who I despise, David, is for very good reason, because we had two experiences where first we had gone on some dates, we had hooked up, and then he was over at my house and I was like finishing putting stuff away, and he like came up from behind me to kind of grab my waist and like put his hands around my waist, and I was like, whoa, wait, stop, like I like need to clean my room, like I need to focus on hanging these last few things up. And he was like, no, come on. And I'm like, no, stop, like I need space. Like I was really stressed out. I was like tried to get everything done on time, and like he was like, oh, come on, and then started like kissing my neck, and I'm like, dude, stop. And he like gaslit me in that moment. He's like, what, I didn't even do anything. And I'm like, I think it's time for you to go. And this is pre-pandemic, so I'm very proud of myself, because that was before I was even very much in the world of consent. I wish I didn't have to be proud of myself for a moment like that, and he could have just not done that, but neither here nor there. Then pandemic happened, and at some point we matched on a dating app. And I was like, okay, I'm better at talking about these things now. I believe in like learning, and maybe like that wasn't like, maybe he just needs some like re-education, because the other times we did hang out, it did go well. So I reached out to him. I was like, hey, you did this thing last time that I really didn't like. I'd be down to hang out again, but like if I tell you to stop, like if anyone tells you to stop, that really needs to be like respected. And he was like, okay. Came over, like essentially the same shit happened, and I was like, okay, like no mas, like you gotta go. And I've talked to other of my comedian friends. Oh yeah, low key, like I used to be in the comedy scene a little bit. Not many people know that. I used to do like open mics, so I'm like the comedy world. Anyway, I've talked to some people and they're like, no, he's not good people. So then back to Billy. So the night after the party, I sent him a text message where I'm like, hey, I'm gonna tell you why I dislike David. And I'm also, there's going to be some feedback in there for you. And so I essentially told him what happened with David, and I told him my experience with him, where he was like just very pushy about this pizza thing, and how I just didn't feel comfortable with him because of that. I didn't feel like I had a voice, and it wasn't like it wasn't that moment. I was, I guess, fine, but I was like, if this had been about something bigger, like that would have really been horrible. And if you can't like respect my boundaries in like this low level situation, like what am I going to expect when like it's a higher level thing? Like this is a really easy thing to just drop. Yeah. So anyway, so I gave him the feedback. I told him, I was like, listen, I know like you didn't have the intention of like forcing me to get pizza. I know that weed impacts you, and I know that played a role. However, that's not an excuse. Like luckily we have, I still think of you as a friend. We have a lot of past good moments, but like this is something you need to be aware of. And he totally accepted the feedback. He's like, I don't remember that, but like I believe you. And like honestly, like normally I'd be annoyed if someone said that, but this really wasn't probably a big deal for him. It was hanging out, smoking weed with a friend, and for 2 minutes talking about pizza. And he accepted it with grace. And then it was really sweet because like maybe like 5 minutes later after the conversation and kind of like ended, we had like both said our things. He was like, hey, if you're interested, I'd love to hang out again, and get you a slice of pizza. Like a slice of pizza on me or something. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, it was very much like, let me do this little token of like, I kind of like fucked up. And I think what was the most, so that was great, like, in a great moment once I had told him like a pretty solid like recognition and accountability. But what really frustrated me is that in the voice note where I told him like my experience with him and my experience with David, I said, I was like, hey, yeah, like, I don't know if you've noticed some distance, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, yeah, I had. And I was like, so why didn't you say something? If I was being distant, if I was clearly like moving myself away from you, why didn't you ask me if I'm okay? Why is it me who's distancing myself from you because I don't feel safe? Why is it up to me to then find the perfect like place and be in the right state of mind and everything to tell you how you like caused harm to me, or how you like impacted the trust I have in you? And so that was like definitely a frustrating thing, and definitely a thing I've noticed. I've had other people, when I confronted someone who did things I asked them not to do to me, when I confronted them, they also were like, yeah, your like body language changed after that happened, but like I just chalked it up to like you were tired. And I was like, check in on me, be like, I notice a change, like what's going on? Anyway. So that's my story.
Well, there's a couple things in there that are jumping out to me.
Okay.
One is just the initial thing about like having a desire, but not necessarily wanting or needing to have that desire met, which is really interesting. And I think it sounds like there was almost some confusion just around that in and of itself. Like, if you want it, you should get it, you know, like, and I also really value a lot of people in my life who are like, that sounds like that's something that would make you really happy, like, let's make sure to get you that thing that'll make you really happy. But what you experienced was sort of like a line crossing into pushiness. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, like what you're explaining is like, how can I help you get that thing? And then hopefully
Right.
it's reciprocated with like, yeah, let's plan it out.
Right.
But I would imagine that your friends would take it differently if you were like, nah, like I want it, but like I'd rather do this, and this with you or something.
Well, and like cost benefit analysis, like I'd have to actually get up and put shoes on and like walk to get it and find it and hope that the place has it and all that. And then, yeah, so that really stood out to me. That's really interesting. And then the other thing is this thing that you mentioned at the end, this sort of that I've experienced too, where it's like there's clearly a shift, and then there's like a fear around checking in about that shift, or like naming that. And I wonder what you think is the reason why people often don't check.
I think part of it has to do with like, especially in talking about men, I think it has to do with masculinity of like, let's say they open themselves up and be like, I'm noticing distance, or I'm feeling distance. Are you okay? If I then turn around and be like, oh my God, like, no, you're being so sensitive. Like, I'm fine. Right. Like, that's a big blow. So that's definitely the first thought that pops into my head. What about you? Why do you think that happens?
Well, that's interesting to me because that almost feels like a way that they might be like, that someone in that position might be gaslighting themselves. Like, I'm being too sensitive, you know, is the like the inner monologue.
Right.
Or like, or she would tell me if there was something wrong, and like fear around hearing what the answer would be. Like, yeah, you did something that I don't like, and then like, how do you how do you deal with that? Actually, I don't know if Jamanika is still in here, but she had an incredible post yesterday or the day before about rejection. And I think rejection is like, is also comes in the form of like what the story that you're experiencing, which is like the rejection might be not like I don't like you or I don't want to see you anymore or at all, but rather like rejection in the sense of you did something that I wasn't comfortable with, and now we have to like have a conversation about it. And because people don't get the chance to experience those conversations going really well, I think there's a lot of fear around the checking in.
And with fear comes avoidance.
Right, right. A lot of avoidance, yes. Um, yeah, so that's what's coming up for me around that. I mean, I've certainly had experiences where I'm afraid to ask because I don't want to make it about me in a way. Where like I'm afraid that I've said something that wasn't cool with someone, and I notice a change in how they're talking to me or in their body language or something, and then I'm like, it would be very self-centered of me to assume that this shift is actually about me. And I'm wondering about, like in the case with Billy, you know, if you were putting distance there, there's a possibility that he was thinking that he wanted to respect whatever space you needed. You know, like you were taking that space. And so why would he check? Because it's pretty clear from how he's reading you that you actually don't want to be talking to him.
Right. And there's a way to do it where it's not selfish, where you can just say, hey, I wanted to check in. We haven't hung out in a while.
Right.
Is everything okay? And or is this like, does this have something? Are you just being distance from me? Or like, are you like feeling like you need distance from people in general? And if so, like, I'm here for you if you want to talk.
Right.
Right, because I do think, right, you don't want to make it like, oh, they're mad at me.
Like, what
Like,
did
because
I
that is very
do?
self-centered. But also, like, even if your friend is upset and it's not about you, like, don't you want to check in?
Right. Right. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And I mean, I've also now had like enough experiences where someone does check in, like after there's just sort of a slight, you know, like whoops, like a miss around something. And when I've had the experience, you know, the opposite experience where someone is like, hey, wanted to like check on that thing that happened, or like I'm noticing that something seems different, like it's felt really good. And it has also felt like, I think, you know, I often wonder about that confidence piece around consent that we talk about so much, like for someone to be able to say, I noticed this change, and like feeling confident in their ability to like gauge that and then have a productive conversation about it, versus, you know, when someone has not had that experience, that it could be really scary to go into
Yeah.
the potential conversation like.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking also, like the skills. Like, has he ever checked in with someone before when they were experiencing, when there was a shift, an experience in the shift? I also wonder, like, does he have the skills to notice the shift early on, or did it take many times of me kind of
Mm,
not interacting with him when I saw him for him to understand that I was being distant from him? That's the other thing, is like I saw him at parties and stuff. Like I've seen
yeah.
him since, and like I was definitely interacting with other people, but not him. Like I just like I didn't know how to say it to him because it felt like kind of weird to just bring up out of nowhere, and that was hard for me. But also like I didn't know if he cared, because he didn't, like, I was like, does he even care about this feedback, or is this just our relationship now where we're not super close because he didn't want to put in the work and I didn't want to like make myself vulnerable in that moment and put in the work for someone who didn't like, who I felt mistreated by. I was also thinking about how when there's about, right, awareness, also awareness of the shift, and awareness when you're like having that moment of, is it about me? Did I do something wrong? I think that's a great opportunity to be like, not like not in too much of a way, but like be like, is there something that possibly I did wrong? And if there's something that like, or that I could have done better, is there something, like bring it up to the person and be like, hey, I noticed we haven't talked in a while. I was wondering if it was because like you were waiting for me to start the conversation,
Mm,
or whether like you wanted to, or if there was some other reason why. But like, so A, just checking in general, like how are we? And then like B, how do you like, do you like that to be like switched off? Do you typically like wait for someone else? And so it's like a check-in about like that thing that you made potentially an assumption about, and an opportunity to check in about the relationship as a whole.
right.
um,
Yeah.
right.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
about just the how different it would be for someone to say like, um, hey, I feel I've felt a shift since the last time we hung out, and I'm open to hearing anything that has come up for you if you'd like to share.
Great.
Right. Right. That's not like, did I fuck up and tell me what I did wrong? And yeah.
Right, it's curiosity.
Right. I think identity plays a big part in this. Like, this is a cis man that you're talking to. I don't know what his race is, but
He's
you know,
white.
okay, a white straight cis man, or as far as
Yeah.
we know. Yeah. So, right, like I do think that there is like an identity differential that puts a power dynamic in there where like it would be really cool to see him take the responsibility of initiating that conversation instead of leaving that emotional labor to you. I think that's like a big piece of some kind of check-in like this. Whereas I'm thinking about like, you know, instances in my life where it's either been like colleagues or friends or, you know, some combination of the two where it's like, it's my responsibility to open up that conversation, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah, that definitely plays a role. And I also like, even if it there are certain other white straight cis men in my life for whom I would be more willing to start that conversation with, because I'm closer with them and I value our relationship more. And that felt, it was like someone who I hung out with sometimes, someone who I knew from my communities. He's not going to be, if he's listening to this, he's not going to be offended by me saying this is all things he knows. Like
Yeah.
I would like to continue to be on a good, like on the right page with him, but I don't want to spend the energy on someone who has those identities, and the last time I spoke to them like made me feel like my boundaries don't matter and like my voice doesn't matter and they know what's best for me.
Right, right. I have to imagine that there's also like perhaps a condescending tone that was involved in this. Yeah, where it led to you feeling like someone wasn't really hearing you. So, yeah.
Yeah. So that was something that I've been like working through in my mind. But I'm glad that now we're like on a good page. She took accountability. And it's always nice to hear that other people think that that person, David, is a asshole. I think I said asshole 3 times on this. Well,
It,
now 4 times on this live.
yeah, I've also had that experience of being like, am I the only one who thinks that this person is kind of
Trash.
awful? Yeah, and then hearing people be like, nope, like me too. And being like, okay, okay, great.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I've
What's
had
going
some,
on in your life?
yeah, well, I've had stuff come up in like the work realm that I feel like is really particularly relevant because I have this class coming up. So my not just my ability to say no to certain jobs, but like my feelings around like scarcity of work has changed a lot over the last year and a half. Feelings around like only wanting to work with people who specifically want to work with me and not people who just need an intimacy coordinator or like someone to teach consent. You know, and like part of my goal with like doing my educator training is that if someone comes to me and they're like, I work with this demographic, like we'd love for you to teach a class, you know, whether it's kids or like someone recently said the military and, you know, like college kid, like I want to serve my community. And so there are certain demographics that, you know, yeah, I could teach kids consent, but like that's not my area of expertise and it's not where I feel like I thrive in what I do. And so the educator training, you know, there's 2 people in there who work with kids. And so I'm like, okay, amazing. Like if someone comes to me, I can send them those people or you, Sarah. So that has like caused a big shift for me in terms of like, I only want to work with people who want to work with me, not just like someone who does what I do. And I got a phone call, like, I mean, at this point, almost 2 weeks ago, with a request for a resume. And it was from someone I'd worked with before. So I felt like, okay, this person like wants me, you know? And then a little over a week went by and I hadn't heard anything. And then I got an email saying, here's the Zoom link for your interview today. And, you know, I think even a year ago, I would have said, or maybe even a few months ago, I would have cleared my schedule and I would have said, great, thanks for letting me know. But instead, this time, I experienced it more as like information about this job. And it told me that there were some issues with communication and like communication flow, you know, that like that no one had reached out to me. And also it showed me a certain amount of like maybe misunderstanding or like assumptions that were being made about my work, in that like I'm not waiting around for these phone calls. I'm running a business and I'm doing all these other things. And so you need to check my availability. Like you can't just send me a meeting and expect me to be there. So, you know, at this point in my career, I felt like I wanted to make it clear that this was like not how I want to be communicated with, and that I have other things going on and a life beyond this. So I wrote back and I said, this is the first I'm hearing of this. Did I perhaps miss an email? You know, I can make this time work, but I'm just a little surprised. And they handled it really beautifully. Like they handled it really well. They were like, oh, let me follow up. And then they came back and they were like, are you available to meet today at this time? And I said, yeah, I can make it work. Thank you. And then I had the interview and I booked the job. And, you know, I probably would have booked the job even if I had done the other thing, which was just cleared my schedule and been like, yep, I'll be there. But now I feel that in booking this job, I am going into it feeling a level of like respect and sort of camaraderie and like being more equal foot. Whereas like I think had I bent myself that way, then going into this job, I would have felt like I had to continue doing that in order to like meet the needs of this gig. So that felt like a win to me.
That's a big one. That's a big one. Yeah. I love that. I've had, when you said, like, I want people to want to work with me because they want to work with me. I've totally had that experience. Recently, some company in England that was doing, in the UK, that was doing like they're trying to do an online sex ed for middle schoolers, reached out to me to see if I would approve their piece on consent and healthy relationships. And I was like, when you say approve, are you looking for me to give you feedback on the content? Are you looking for me to create content? Are you looking for just the use of my name? Right. And they were like, ideally, we'd like you to look at it and then let us use your name. Also, they did not offer to pay me. To which I said, I can charge you for this, and I can, if I review your work and see that it is up to the standards that like I have and like believe that it is like solid content, then yes, you can use my name on it. So first you're gonna pay me, and also like stop. Why are you assuming that like this is aligned with what I do? Because of course, and I said, and they were like, okay, if it isn't aligned with like up to your standards, would we still pay you? And I was like, no, like if I like take a glance and like I'm like this isn't good, like yeah, no, like we're good. Of course I looked at it and it was like, oh, it was just it was like everything was binary. Everything was like, this is consent, this is not consent, this is a constructive relationship, this is a destructive relationship. And then like even the questions that they asked, they were like quizzes at the end of each section, I got the answers wrong. Like multiple. I was like, A, I don't have enough information. B, like, what? Like, no, you're wrong. This is the right, what I said is the right answer. And so I came back to them and told them like, I was like, if you work with me, you are going to need an overhaul of your curriculum. And I was like, let me know if that's of interest. If not, like, wish you the best. Never heard from them again. But it was like one of those things where it's like, it was so obvious that they have no familiarity with my work, no familiarity with like my pedagogy. Like it was, and I was just like, no, I don't want to, you can't just like pick me from a tree and be like, okay, we'll use that one. Like, no, you have to actually like value, if I'm going to work with you, like I need you to value my work and value my input. And that's not the first time that's happened. I was hired to write like a consent speech for like a poly community, and like
yeah.
they looked at it, I told you that, they looked at it and they were like, we want it to be more positive, so we're going to change it. Thanks. Never reach out to me to be like, why did you make these choices? What do you feel is important? They just wanted to say that a consent educator was
Right.
involved.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
I
didn't
have,
set boundaries on that first one. I did on that second one.
right.
Or the second one I did on the first one.
Yeah, it's interesting how sometimes like those ways that your boundaries get pushed and then you're like, that fucking sucked. Like, why did that suck so much? And then, you're like,
Mm.
what did I learn for next time? Like, I think there was a time when I would beat myself up for that kind of thing and be like, oh, I should have, blah, blah, blah. And now I really try to focus on just like, okay, what did I learn and what do I implement moving forward so that that doesn't happen again? I budged on like refund policy stuff for my 6 week. And then was asked again, and it's like, it's not, if someone wrote to me and was like, I've had an emergency or I'm sick or like I've had a death in my family or like, if something came up, like, yes, I would for sure budge on my refund policy. But when someone writes to me and they're like, I took on too much, can I get a refund? And we're like halfway through the class, I'm like, no. No.
Do you do
Um,
prorated or no? What is, I don't even know what your refund policy is.
no.
Yeah.
My policy, I'll give a refund up to 24 hours before it starts.
Wow.
Because at that point, once it starts, I can't let new people in,
Yeah.
and I'm not charging like by the class session. It's for the whole thing. And if you've overextended yourself, you still get every recording and you can do it in your own time.
Got it.
Yeah. So
Got it.
it's like not it's not yeah, I don't, and also, what I did was I actually added to like the checkout page when you pay for the class, like part of consent is being aware of your capacity. So before you sign up for this class, with yourself, if this is something that you can take on right now, because now my refund policy is fixed. I had someone reach out and they were like incredibly, it sounded really, urgent around like a true, like if it's an access need or it's like, if someone says that they're like struggling to pay for what, like, I'm not gonna like keep your
Yeah.
money. But yeah, when someone is just like, I took on too much and I'm not going to be able to finish the class, I'm like, well, you can keep getting the recordings, but I'm not going to budge on the refund policy halfway through the class. So you know, those are things that I'm like learning about my own boundaries, and then also like how to make sure that it's super duper clear to people so that they're, you know, because I don't think it's okay. And like, I've had the experience where like I've, you know, signed up for like this alarm system in my apartment, for example. And there was like something in the fine print in the terms of service that no one ever looks at. And then they, you know, they're like, well, it was in our terms of service. And I'm like, y'all count on people not reading that. Like, you know,
Yeah.
so what it is for me is it's like a learning experience of like how to be more clear about my boundaries, so that I don't have to hold so firm on it anymore.
So I have a question for you, because this
Yeah.
is something that I've gone back and forth with myself on, which is if someone was in your 6-week boundary setting course and on, let's say, after the second session, they emailed you and they were like, Mia, this just wasn't what I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting this, that, and the other. Is it possible to get like a prorated refund or something? Basically a circumstance, like that's a very specific instance, but I'm just talking about circumstances where like someone didn't realize what they were signing up for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or where someone, yeah. What they were signing up for wasn't what they expected.
Yeah. I think there's a few variables in there. One is like, at what point in the course are they saying that to me? I think also, you know, I'd be curious, like, I do think that all the copy and all the information on the page on my site about my classes is like very extensive, like almost to a fault, you know, where sometimes I'm looking at it being like, this is too much for people to read. But I want to be very clear and I want to avoid what you're getting at, which is like someone signing up and being like, whoa, this is like totally not what I thought. So I think I've done a pretty good job of like preventing that level of like misunderstanding.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if someone was like, oh yeah, another thing is like if someone said that that they expected it to be something, and I was like, it's super clear everywhere that that's not what this was.
Right.
That's, you know, then, and it sounds like that person was like, you know, only like seeing what they wanted to see. That would be something that I would maybe be like, you know, here's all the information that's available. Like nowhere in here does it say what you said you thought the class was. But yeah, I mean, if someone was like, I don't know, I think it would be a very different thing if someone was like, you know, I'm finding this content actually like really triggering. Like I wasn't expecting to feel so in this class, but like this content is like really challenging for me and I think I'm not ready. Or it's like it's bringing up a lot of stuff, making me feel like I actually need to like find a new therapist, or like I need to, you know, like a somatic blah 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 program. Like, you know, then I might be like, oh yeah, like sounds like some stuff really came up for you that was unexpected. You know, this gets into this thing that I teach in class, which is the difference between something being what you expected, being not what you expected versus not okay. Because very often things are not what you expected, but totally fine. You know, like it wasn't, I didn't expect to play Pictionary at this birthday party, but I'm fine with it. Or it's great. Like, and so when something is not what you expected, it's not necessarily not okay. And then you can also have things be exactly what you expected, but not okay. You know, where like you plan out the whole thing, it goes exactly according to plan, and you're like, actually, turns out I hate that. And then I think there's another thing that happens that's even subtler, which is that it is what you expected, but how you feel while you're doing it is not what you expected. I've had that experience with like when I've done these exercises in class, when I was doing classes like for actors in person, where someone would ask their partner, can I like bend down and untie and retie your shoe? And the person would say yes, and so they would do it, and then they would, you know, come back up and be like, was that what you expected? That's how the exercise goes. And then the person would be like, you know, everything that you did was exactly what I was expecting you to do, but I had a sudden like really bizarre awareness that like you were sort of doing something like performing a service for me. You know, you were like so low and you were like crouching down before me, like it felt like this weird power dynamic, and I became suddenly very aware that your head was right near my crotch. You know, so that's like, that's what what happened was what you expected, but how you felt was different. So those are things that, yeah, in any number of situations, like if someone came to me and asked about that, I would be willing to consider some kind, like working something out. And I have with several people who were like, you know, who came to me for various reasons, like struggling to learn on Zoom or, you know, whatever, that I've worked out with them. And then I sort of got to a point where I was like, the class is halfway done now. I'm not refunding.
Yeah. 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 I like those considerations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are helpful. I haven't like, it hasn't happened to me. I have yet for someone to be like, knock on wood, I have yet for someone to be like, I want a refund.
Right.
But I've been, and nowhere on my website do I have a policy actually. In my contracts for schools I do, but nowhere on my website, like for my products, do I have one. And like, that's because I struggle with what it is. Also very much because I have low ticket items on my site. So I'm
Right.
also like, if someone is like, feels like, I don't know, I haven't had to deal with it yet.
Yeah. I think my method of like combating that or preventing it is just being as clear as I can be about what an offering is. And, you know, I'm of the mind that if I've performed a service, I should get paid for that service. And
Why?
if why on earth would you think that that's something that you should get? I don't know if anyone following us and wants to check out both of our stories today or our business highlights. If you're watching this in the future, yeah, pay people for their labor and all the work that they do. There was another thing that happened in the work realm that I'm trying to remember around like, oh yeah, that I just turned something down recently, that like someone reached out and it sounded like a perfectly cool thing. It was like to speak at an event or be on a panel. I don't remember exactly. And it was about like BDSM and kink. And honestly, that's just like not my area of expertise. And I can certainly talk about consent within those realms and you know, to the best of my ability. And I have like enough of a familiarity to feel like I can confidently do that. But you know, there's loads of people in my life who I think have like a way more solid grasp and like a lot more firsthand experience than I do, that I think would be a better fit for that. And I just didn't want to take on anything new. Like I just was like, this is in December. I'm like, I'm gearing up for like 2 weeks of vacation. I just don't want to add anything to my plate that's not mine. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to, I've got my own stuff that I want to do, and I want to leave room for those things, and I don't want to I just don't want to take on anything new. Yeah. That's it. I am teaching a class coming up about business and like your ability to say no and sort of shirking like scarcity around work and, you know, sort of scaffolding yourself in a way that, I love that word that you use, around, so that you like stay true to your values, like, you know, filtering everything, including work that you're offered through like your own value system and gauging like whether it's the right thing for you or not. And I think that there's just such a pervasive mindset that like being anti-capitalist and making money are like mutually exclusive. But very often that's coming from people who would identify as socialists or anarchists and believe in like universal basic income. And so they do believe in the idea that we should have money and resources. They just don't believe that we should be getting those things through the market as it exists currently. And the way that I see it is like the government is not going to give me those things. It's not going to pay me enough to take care of myself. And so I need to be the one who takes responsibility to do that for myself. You know, I whatever. So yeah, that's what this class is going to be addressing, and specifically like how to build a business model where the entire thing is a sliding scale. You know, there's various access points at different prices to the work, and then also the idea of like when your business makes more money, that anyone who's like a point of contact, a contractor or anyone who works for you, that they also, so it's like a sort of profit sharing model, like moving toward a co-op model, if and when anyone wants to like jump into that role with you. And yeah, like holding yourself accountable to your values, even as you like maybe make more money, hopefully.
Yeah, I love that. I also just like a quick plug for like, you recently helped me with a business thing on my end where I was really struggling to like with my relationship with Instagram, and like, is Instagram a gift to me, or am I a gift to Instagram essentially?
Yeah.
And I mean, you know this, but now telling everyone else, I so appreciated that. And I was like, oh, like mind blown emoji. Yeah. So I am highly vouching for Mia's class. Yeah. Get on it.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's stuff that I've worked really hard on for myself over like my entire, you know, working life, but really like focused on over the last year and a half. And I hired an amazing business coach, Des Davis, the Rich Witch Life, who sort of like fostered and nurtured and furthered these ideas that I had about like understanding money as like an energetic exchange. You know, it's one of many resources that we have. And because we don't live in like a bartering economy, you know, my other resources are like food, housing, energy, time, all those things. And money, often just given the way that our economy is set up, can buy me those things. It can help me be resourced, and it helps me have access to these other resources that I think we all agree that we need. You know, we need money, energy, we need food, energy, time, shelter, and so on. So, and I also really believe that money needs to move in order to have that energetic effect, which is why, you know, that's like an anti sort of hoarding mentality, and more in the line of like abundance and flow. So that's what we'll be talking about in the class.
That's awesome. When does it start, or when does it start, and when's the last day to sign up?
That class is December 7th. I think the last day to sign up will just be the day before, which is like different from my 6-week because I don't have to like prepare as much. So that'll be December 4th, 7th. And then there's also a class on consent wizardry, consent magic, that I'm very excited about. That'll be the following week on the 14th. And then that weekend, I'm doing one in person. If you're in the Los Angeles area on unceded Tongva land around where we live, you are, there's 12 spots for that, and you can come and learn with other people in a park with like relative privacy. It's like a pretty secluded park. And I'm super excited about that. That's the first in-person one that I've done since the
Oh,
shutdown.
that's awesome.
Yeah. And that one's on a sliding scale. It's 15 to 25. So very, very affordable.
Very cool. Are we done?
Yeah,
I
I
felt
think
like that was like a done, yeah.
we're done.
Thank you to
Next
everyone.
time we can talk about next time I'll share about some stuff in my personal life. Today felt like a work recap.
Work thing. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe at some point I'll share about my romantic life once I have one. That'd be a fun thing to
Mm,
share about.
I'd love to hear your
One
romantic
more time?
life. I said I would love to hear about your romantic life when you have one.
That sounds so lovely. Deal.
Yeah.
Deal.
Okay.
All right.
All right,
Schachter.
Sarah. Lovely as always. See you soon.
What did you just call me?
I said Sarah, lovely as always.
That's not my consent countdown name.
Oh, Casper.
I know. You were like, what's happening? I was like, Schachter.
Hey.
We're
Excuse me.
sports people. We go by last names.
Oh yes. Okay, Casper, pleasure as always. See you next time.
Signing off.
Signing off. Bye.